Hi, I'm John Kennedy. I'm the bike buyer for Evo. Today we're going to talk about sag and how to set your suspension up appropriately. Sag is how much your bike sits into the travel when fully weighted. So setting up your sag is important because you don't want to be sitting too high or too low in the travel when riding your bike. All bikes have sag built into them, so in order to set your bike up optimally, you want to adjust it for rider weight. So when setting sag up, don't forget to account for the weight of your riding gear plus your body weight. Now that we've adjusted your shock in the wide open position, what we're going to want to do is find out where your starting point is. We're going to have the rider put his hands on the handlebars, feet on the pedals, and assume a normal riding position. We're going to reach down, bring this O-ring all the way to the top of the shock stanchion. Then I'm going to ask the rider to put your feet on the ground and slowly get off of the bike without compressing it too much more. That'll give us a clearer indication of where we sit in the sag. So sag generally sits between 25 and 30% into the travel. In the case of transition, we want to set this bike up at 35%. In order to get the correct sag for your particular bike, make sure to reference your owner's manual. As we can see here, the rider is sitting much too far into the travel, so what we're going to want to do is add air pressure to the canister to raise the rider position up. It's important to cycle through the shock a little bit as you get going to get some of the fluids moving in the shock and to balance the air chamber. So as previously mentioned, the rider was sitting too far into his travel. So what we're going to want to do to adjust that is take our shock pump, unscrew the cap from our Schrader valve, thread the shock pump on, and add the desired amount of air. So now that we've adjusted the air pressure, we're going to have the rider get back on the bike, assume a riding position with feet on the pedals, hand on the handlebars. We're going to do as we did before. We're going to adjust the O-ring on the stanchion. We're going to have the rider hop off. And as you can see, in this particular case, we've got the rider in the optimal riding position. If there's any question about where you should be sitting in your travel based on the particular shock that you have on your bike, reference your owner's manual for that individual shock. Do note that not all shock manufacturers have a sag meter listed on the stanchion. If you have a Fox shock or another brand, you may want to use a measuring device to figure out where you're sitting in the travel, or you can eyeball that you're sitting about a third of the way down. So setting up our fork is very similar to setting up the rear shock. We're going to have the rider get on the bike and assume a forward riding position, cycle through the fork just a little bit. We're going to take the O-ring, slide it down the stanchion, and the rider can gently get off the bike. So as we can see in this scenario, the rider's not sitting far enough into the travel. You roughly want to target 25 to 30% into your travel. So in this case, we're going to remove air from the air chamber. We're going to take our shock pump, we're going to unscrew the valve cap, we're going to thread the shock pump in, and as mentioned, we're going to remove the desired amount of air. Once you've made your adjustments, you're going to have the rider get back on the bike, assume a forward aggressive riding position, cycle through the shock, O-ring down on the stanchion, and carefully hop off the bike. And as you can see, the rider's achieved the appropriate riding position. Also do note again that depending on what fork you have, each manufacturer is different and you may not have a sag meter built into the fork. In that case, again, I would use a measuring device or eyeball that you're sitting 25 to 30% into the travel. So note that setting up your suspension is going to take some time. Your bike's not going to feel exactly the same out on the trail as it does in the parking lot. So I would recommend that you take a shock pump with you on the first few rides, and don't be afraid to play with it. Add or subtract air, find what feels right to you. This is a baseline. It's to get you to a medium point, but what we want to do is get a setup that's right for you. If you have any more questions, you can visit some of our guides online at evo.com or visit any one of our retail locations.